We all have belief, we all have faith, but it's in what we have belief and faith in. So whenever it is that I have a fear, I realize, hang on, you are trying to do something in the physical. Because in this world, we're either operating in the physical world or we're operating in the spiritual world or metaphysical world.
Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. Today we are joined by Shalisha Samuel, who is an attorney and a performer who blogs on the power of our mind. Since she was 7 years old, she began living in other countries, first moving to Barbados and then Brooklyn, New York, so not very far from me, and later in life to Switzerland and the United Kingdom. And now she's found herself in the Caribbean, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. Her everyday goal is to have the right perception based on her spiritual practice of love being the only truth. So we're going to talk about what that means. But from this conversation, you're going to learn about a human being who is up to many amazing things in the world, studying personal development, improving herself, working as a voiceover performer, as well as being an attorney who has seen many different cultures around the world, which is very different than me. I've only lived in upstate New York, and Shalisha has been practically everywhere. I know that's dramatic, but she's been a lot more places than myself, and I know a lot of us listening have been as well. So when you take away even just one piece of value from this conversation with Shalisha, all that we ask is you share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. You're the reason that the Be Better broadcast has grown the way that it has over the past 2 years to nearly 300 episodes, because you are the best part of the Be Better team, and you're making the most difference. So without further ado, let's talk to Shalisha. Shalisha, it's great to have you on the broadcast. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Brandon. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I love your energy. You've got great energy. You said a prayer for the show before we started, and I'm the same way, by the way. Before every show, before every important conversation, really at the beginning of every day, I'll close my eyes, I'll put my hands on my heart, and I specifically do it in the form of, I read this book called The Magic by Rhonda Byrne a long time ago. And are you aware of that book by chance?
Definitely.
Okay.
And I'm familiar with Rhonda Byrne as well. Yes. The Secret.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So I read that book, and she talks about having a magnificent outcome for the things coming up in your day that's important. And I always just wish for a magnificent outcome. And what's funny is I generally get what I wish for, and usually even more at the same time. So I just thought it was super cool that we're similar in that way.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's not surprising that you get what it is that you wish for, because really our thoughts manifest daily, whether we know it or not. And we ought to be intentional about what we think of. So even today, I was in the park walking my dog this morning, and I was sending a voice note to a friend of mine in Barbados. And I said, I'm looking forward to this show. I hope it's going to go great. And then I said, you know what? The show went amazing. It was excellent. We had a great conversation. It was phenomenal. And a lot of the people who listened benefited from it. That's how it was. Yeah. So I assumed it to be. And that's how it is. Same thing with what you're doing with your prayers.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm curious, because I didn't ask you this yet, because I like everything to be like on the spot, impromptu. How did you get started as being both an attorney and a voiceover performer? Because I don't know anyone else who's an attorney and a voiceover actor. So how did you get started with that? What does that look like? What's the story?
There's a common thread between the two of them: advocacy. And it's that I do enjoy speaking. So as an attorney, I advocate, and as a voiceover actor, I speak. So two things that I love. But in terms of the voiceover acting, I'd always loved performing. I would have gone to Erasmus Hall campus for humanities and performing arts. So I went to a school based on performing arts because that was an interest of mine since I was a child. I wanted to be on TV, on screen, on films. And that continued for many, many years. And I just, I was very much into modeling when I was in my 20s. And because I'm just 5'4", well, I shouldn't say just 5'4". I'm a wonderful 5'4". We aren't ideal for the runway. So I would do lots of print advertising and television commercials. And there was a commercial I did which required me to go into the studio to voice over what I would have said in the actual television commercial. And from there, I was asked, hey, could you do another voice over here? Could you do more? And it just blossomed that way. But even when I was young, I used to always play around with my voice. I would be the ones to do my friends' family's answer machine, my family's answer machine, because it can do that kind of like, hi, you've reached,
Yeah.
that kind of a voice. And in terms of law, as I said, I would have grown up in New York, and I grew up in a time where in the 90s, late-ish 90s, where there was a lot of, you see it a lot more now, but police brutality. There were a lot of protests, Amadou Diallo, all of those situations would have occurred in New York. And in high school, I would have called myself like a young activist. That's what I thought I was. And I saw that there were a lot of injustices, and I wanted to become an attorney to fix those issues, to represent individuals who have been wronged, right?
Mm.
So fast forward, I am in Geneva, and I am at a fork in the road. I have been, I love voiceover, I love performing arts. So I was, practicing opera at my church. So I was gonna do an audition tape for school to attend opera school. But then a law school came into town, and they're like, oh, we have an open house. I went, I applied, I got it, and that's how I became an attorney. And that's how I've continued to kind of straddle both worlds. Yeah.
Interesting. What a story. What I find very fascinating about that story is you found your place at each of these different places without an excessive amount of this is exactly what I want to be doing in 20 years. Like, and there might have been some of that, but like, okay, there was the open house, you went, and then immediately you're like, this is what I want to do. You played around with your voice growing up, you did a lot of cool things with it, and then you were presented with an opportunity to do this commercial with your voice. And then they said they must have loved your voice and loved what you did because they wanted you to do more. And it's almost as if you've been presented with these opportunities through your life, but ultimately you were the one who said, I want to take this opportunity and I want to pursue it. You didn't shun it. You didn't push it away. You didn't reject it. You almost embraced what the universe handed you on a platter.
Yeah. And it really is, it was just, a desire. I for many years wanted to be an attorney, and the dream haunted me. And I know that there are people who can relate to this. There's something that, in your heart you've wanted to do, something you want to achieve. And time is going by, and in your quiet moments, it comes to you. It says, hey, do you remember me? Law haunted me until I'm like, I absolutely have to do this. There were other things that I was involved in. When I was in Geneva, I was working with a specialized UN agency. So I was doing cool things, but I knew that I wanted to practice law. I knew that being in the courtroom is something that I would enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I wanted to be a lawyer too when I was
Wow.
17, 18, and I actually started to go to school for political science, not very long, but I got into sales at the same time, and my sales career swept me in a very different direction. And I'm glad where it brought me, but I also wanted to be in the courtroom, wearing the suit, debating, having those conversations. What kind of law do you practice?
Well, I'm not in private practice right now. I work within the governmental sector.
Mm.
But in terms of prior to that, I was in a private chambers, and it was varied. There was criminal law. There was also civil law as well. And so for criminal, it varied. There would have been, drug possession cases. For civil, it would have been a lot of employment issues and personal injury issues. Now I'm in the governmental sector, and I work within the judicial sector, and we're working on things like creating sexual offenses criminal court, so that you have a court that is specially designed for persons who are, who have complained of sexual assault, and they can be in an environment that supports them being able to testify. But of course, a fair environment for the person who is accused as well. But just a number of initiatives within the justice system that has been very, very exciting. So it's a very varied experience.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, you're helping people at literally the highest level you could possibly help these people. And it's interesting how you went from being this activist in a way in high school to now really serving people at this highest level. And you're still like at the beginning of your life and your career. Like, who knows where this is going to lead? In terms of your story, which I love, a lot of people who watch this show specifically are in a position where they might know what they're good at, but they haven't yet found or have become aware of their personal gifts and what it is that lights them up. And in a way, you've come across your gifts through your life early in life, leaving those voicemail recordings and doing what you did in high school. Like, these gifts of yours, did you come across them on your own? Did someone help you and inspire you to find them? Like, how did you come across these very innate gifts that you have? Because I think that's really important for those listening.
And that's a great question, Brandon. I think play, 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 whatever it is that you find to be something that you can have fun with, that you would consider to be play, those are usually the indicators of what it is you can do in terms of a service to this world. And what happens is, to be honest, I do think a lot more people know what it is that they want to do. They just perhaps have fear within them. And another thing that we oftentimes do is like, oh, that's so easy. I can do that in my sleep. It's too easy for it to be a career, because we think that career is something that we have to work hard at. And so with my friends, I would do all kinds of impersonations. I would joke around, do all kinds of things with my voice. And they're like, wow, they're like, oh my God, like they're frozen. I'm like, what happened? They're like, you just did that. I'm like, yeah, like that's nothing. So I did that for many years until it's like, you know what? It's easy for me. Why not make money from what is easy? So one, we oftentimes do know what it is we want. It is a fear of stepping out. And, we just have to be courageous with it and quiet the thoughts outside as well as the thoughts inside of our own minds. And then play the things that we have fun with. We can find ways of generating revenue from it. It doesn't happen in every single case, but at least it can probably indicate to you things that are common, that you can create a very similar career from that thing that you consider as play.
Yes. Excellent explanation, by the way, and so simple yet powerful, because imagine you have these gifts and you use them to make a positive difference in the lives of other people, and you're making money from that gift at the same time. And there's some people listening who are like, I just want to know what my gift is. I just want to find my gift or become aware of my gift. I don't necessarily need to make money from it. But in today's world, especially as a voiceover talent, or even as a singer or a guitarist or an artist or a painter, whatever it is you do that may be creative or a gift of yours, you can be online and build this personal brand and find many different opportunities to earn a living doing what you love doing, versus going to a 9 to 5 job that you might not love and then going home and doing this gift on the side. Like, what if you could be doing what you love and making money from it by even teaching other people what it is you know? And like you said, there's two parts to what you said about the gifts, which is we have this fear of, well, what if I'm not really good at it after all? What if this isn't my gift? What if I'm ridiculed? What if I'm criticized? That fear and pushing through that fear is super important. And I want to ask you about that. But you also said at the same time, you might say, well, that's too easy for me. There's no challenge there. And if there's no challenge, right, we need challenge as human beings. People who I find are, especially clients I work with and companies I work with, people who are in rough spots, a lot of people who are sad, even experiencing depression, a lot of these individuals aren't challenged in their life, right? I find the people who are most challenged and the people who have the most going on, they are generally, most of the time, not always, the happiest people that I know. It's the people who are constantly being challenged and expressing their gifts. That fear, though, is very real, and we all feel it. We all have it. It's not unique. I was talking with someone in sales yesterday, and she said, Brandon, I get nervous every time I bring up insurance is one of the products we sell at this company I work with. She's like, I get very nervous mentioning insurance to the customer. And I said, I do too, every single time. And I'm number one in upstate New York for insurance sales at this company. And she's like, you do? And I said, every single time I get nervous and I get fearful, but I have experience behind me. And I believe and understand that this is a great product for the person across from me. So that comes across in my communication. And that's the same thing that you do as a lawyer. Your certainty and how sure you are that you are correct and you are serving this person is going to make a big difference in your testimony. So how does one push through that fear? How do you push through that fear, having moved to so many different places, doing several different things? Like, how do you move through that fear?
I'll tell you how, and I'll even add a third one, and that is going within, quieting the mind, closing your eyes, and going within. The same thing you would do when you're prepping for your show. I know that all answers lie within me. There is an infinite source of knowledge, of intelligence, of love, of peace that is within me at all times. And that is my I am presence. So whenever it is that I have a fear, I realize, hang on, you are trying to do something in the physical. Because in this world, we're either operating in the physical world or we're operating in the spiritual world or metaphysical world. So whenever I have any bodily, like I'm worried or like I have butterflies in my stomach or my hand is shaking, I know that I'm trying to rely on this physical body and the experiences that I, Shalisha Samuel, have gathered in my 38 years of experience on this earth to help me create a solution, to help me navigate a path, and to help me make a decision. That's when I know I'm on the wrong path. And so these days, what I do is I pause and I go within. I remember who I am. I remember that anything I want is here in this present moment now. I know that that could be a little bit esoterical, but there are other things that one can do. You can do breathing exercises to quiet your mind so that you can be more at peace. And that would also allow you to not focus on the result, but just being present in that moment. And another fun thing is, in the beginning, when you're trying these things, it could be challenging. But think of it as this. I heard someone said recently, you are not preparing for a speech in front of 5,000 people. You're just going to your mailbox to collect mail. Are you going to panic when I'm going for this mail? Oh my God. No, you're relaxed. It's just mail. So it's really our own thoughts about the thing. And our thoughts are so powerful that we decide, oh my God, 5,000 people in the audience. We add the value to that thing, and that very value we add, we then become fearful of it and we hold ourselves back. Yeah.
Wow. I love that number 3. Be with yourself in silence, go within, which I love. And really what I took from that is trust and faith that you already have the answers and the knowledge that you need. What a story, that mailbox story, by the way. Like, there is no difference physically with you standing in front of a group of 1,000 people versus you walking outside to collect the mail. The only thing that's different, like what you said, is the way that you think about that experience.
Yes, exactly. I'm a student of A Course in Miracles. I don't know if you've ever heard about that book. Marion Williamson speaks about it very often. And within the course, it says there are no order of difficulties in miracles. So miracles occur naturally. And one of the things I would add too is that there's no order of difficulties in what we would perceive as problems. It's just one thing just appearing in very different forms. So if there is a fear within, if we're not focusing on love and being at peace in the present moment, anything other than that would show up in all kinds of ways. It could be, you're in traffic, you're agitated, you run into someone because you're not paying attention. It could be anything, whatever manifestations of anything other than love that would appear. But it looks like very different things, but it is the same thing. So when we're having challenges, just know it's just one issue, and that is the lack of being in alignment with who you are and not being in a space of love. And even when it comes to, making decisions, you can approach it in that same way, knowing that I'm at peace right now. I'm just going to my mailbox. I'm not going for a job interview.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there a time in your life where you were able to say, I am in alignment with love? Was there a time in your life where that happened for you?
That was actually very recent. So I've been listening to and doing the works of people like Neville Goddard, Joseph Murphy, Eckhart Tolle, and others, similar writers and thinkers for many years. And it really was only in the past couple of months that it really hit me of let me be in that fullness of love. In A Course in Miracles, the book, the text starts out by this simple word: nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And it was only this year I'm like, I get it. Nothing real can be threatened. When we look at, some relationships, when we look at jobs, when we look at the economy, it can be up, it can be down, it can be here and then it's gone. So if it is real, it cannot be threatened. So those things are not real. So nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. And we live in a world of polarity, and I think that also brings a lot of peace. It can be hot, it can be cold, you can have money, you cannot have money. And once you remove yourself from that line of up and down and you rise above it, you find yourself more in peace. I hope that came off clear.
It was very intricately said. And I think there's a big difference in reading something and then re-teaching it and re-explaining. And it's very natural for you to teach these subjects. And again, what is natural for you, others who are brand new to this topic might be thinking, okay, well, how do I apply that in my life? Like, you just recently became aligned with this idea and philosophy, but you've been studying this for a long time. Was there something you read? Was there a turning point in your life that really helped to solidify this new stance for you?
Yes, actually, there was a book I recently read. It is called Feel Free to Prosper on 2 Weeks to Unexpected Income by Marilyn Janae. And and my focus also has been on financial freedom
Mm,
and financial independence. And she says that many people who write on this topic, one of the things that sometimes is not always taught to people is the mind. When you say, I am wealthy, I am at peace, I'm in a romantic relationship, I'm in a wonderful job, I've been promoted, your mind is going to say, yeah, right. No, you have. You're lying. So there is resistance within the mind. That's that instant thing. The fact is, on every single level, whatever you say is true. If you say I am or I can, it is absolutely true and it can actualize. What happens, however, is that our belief system can stop those things from coming to reality.
mm.
And therefore, you have to reprogram and recondition your mind. So she, along with Joseph Murphy, who was one of her first teachers, says that there's a technique you can do before you go to bed and when you wake in the morning. Say these two words: wealth, success. Wealth, success. You say those two words for about 5 minutes, because when you are just going to sleep, your brain, your mind is in a more receptive place, so it's not going to resist as much. It's opened.
Yeah.
And also throughout the day, say those words and there wouldn't be resistance, because you're not saying, oh, I am this. You're just saying wealth, success. I've got it here on my whiteboard:
Wow.
wealth, success, wealth, success. And so I say that throughout the day. And then after a while, you can call it hypnosis, you could, whatever you want to call it, your mind starts to change. You begin to start saying, I am wealthy, I'm a person who attract wonderful relationships. I am someone who meet people easily. I go into the room and I just light up the room. I speak to anyone I want to speak to, and people come up to me because I'm a friendly face. There's something about me that attracts them to me. So you start by saying those very simple things. You can write them out as well, for like a couple of days, and then after a while you can then shift into, I am prosperous, I am a wealthy person, I am healthy, my body is a phenomenally strong body. In the Bible it says, let the weak say, I am strong.
Mm.
Yeah, it's the same concept. And that is how you can start this habit. You can start this practice. That was such an awakening moment for me. And then I
What
was
a
able to
moment.
go back. Yeah, I was able to go back to Joseph Murphy, Neville Goddard, Earl Shuff, and I'm like, I get it. I
Yes.
really get it.
That is profound. So what you just said there is in the moments where your brain will give you the least resistance, say these words: wealth, success, and maybe even add to it. You don't want to complicate it, but maybe even add to it other words or states of being that you want to embody for yourself, right? So I read a book, and I'm sure you've read this book as well, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yep.
And I read this a long time ago, the first time at the beginning of my personal development journey. And then I reread it about 3 years ago. And I probably should read it again. It's a great book. But he talks about this principle of exactly what you're talking about. And he puts a word to it. He calls it auto-suggestion, right? And the more you say something to yourself, the more you begin to believe it. Even if you don't believe it at first, even if you say, I am wealthy, and like what you said, your brain's like, no, you're not. Who are you kidding? You're not wealthy. Like, you're in debt, you got all these things, right? But the more you say it, the more you begin to believe it. It's very akin to how a liar can actually pass a lie detector test because they've told themselves that lie for so long that now they actually believe it. And just imagine if you believe that you are wealthy. Imagine if you believe that you are successful. Will you feel different? Yes. Will you make different actions? Yes. Will you get very different results? Yes. Will you pay attention to these miracles that the universe is sending your way? Absolutely, because you'll be more aware of them. And I actually just pulled this up too. This is a little blurb on autosuggestion. And just to read it real quick for those who aren't watching, autosuggestion, which is this principle of repeating something, allows you to identify those moments where you're fully mindful and you recognize the need to double down on your reaffirmations, right? So through practice and repetition, moments like these become second nature and become common sense, right? So imagine if these things that at first you don't believe become second nature to you, and it is who you become. And just from this conversation, Shalisha, it sounds like this is exactly who you've become because of all the work and the studying that you've done up until this point.
Yeah. And I'll add to, because sometimes people, when they're introduced to this concept, they think, I've got to learn how to believe. I've got to learn how to have faith. We all have belief. We all have faith, but it's in what we have belief and faith in. If we look at our external life right now, once we accept, I have created this from my own thinking, we then begin to realize I am powerful. I am a creative person. I am a creator. So we don't have to learn belief and faith. We already have it. And that's the ease. That's such an amazing place to be where you're like, okay, I've been doing this all my life. Let me now do it intentionally. And let me not be awake, you know? Let me
Yeah,
be let me not be asleep, sorry. Let me be very awake in what I'm doing.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
it takes time. It takes time to get there, and that's all we've got is time, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you begin now, where will you be in a year? And where will you be in a few months if you begin practicing these new strategies and ways of thinking? The people around you, I'll tell you, when I was 21, I transformed my life in 6 months, and I had the help of a mentor who helped me do it. I lost 60 pounds. I eliminated over $20,000 in debt. I completely transformed my thought patterns. I just posted a picture on my LinkedIn of me in 2016 versus me in 2017, as well as other years as well. But if you look specifically at those two pictures, I am a completely different human being because I started to put these principles into action. That's when I discovered personal development. And that's when I had a mentor in my life. And I had a physical mentor, but I also had a mentor in people like Dale Carnegie and Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn. And several of those people aren't even alive anymore, but because they've written books that I can go to the library or that I can go to Barnes and Noble and buy for $19.99. Well, books are a little bit more expensive now, so maybe a little bit more, which is fine, right? You spend 25 bucks on a book, and you're able to digest decades of wisdom that you wouldn't have been able to figure out for 10, 20 years. But because you read this book, now you've got the answers that you need at your fingertips. But it takes time, but not that much time.
Yeah. And time is an illusion as well, as we know. But in our physical world, in terms of cause and effect, thankfully there is a little space in between. And I would say, as you become more aware of the realities and the laws of this three-dimensional world we live in, it shortens. So to whom much is given, much is expected. So now that you're fully aware, once you know how it's done, you have to be, I remember experiencing trauma and some pain where it's like, oh my God, I have to be really cautious of what it is I think, because it starts to happen really quickly.
Hmm.
That little buffer, it starts to, I find, reduced. Yeah. So but for those who don't know, to whom much is given, much is expected. For those who don't know as yet, there is a bit of a buffer there. It's to protect that person. Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Let me ask you, you've been to a lot more places than I've been to. I've traveled places, I've been places, but I've never lived in places for prolonged periods of time.
Yeah.
What would you say you've learned the most from all of the different places that you've traveled to and have lived in? What's like one of your top, what's your top learning from traveling and living in many different places?
It's a great question. I want to say that we're beautifully one. We really are the same. And our differences are only those that we can see with the eyes. So, when I'm in Accra, Ghana, I'm able to get sobolo. When I'm in Paris, I'm able to get red wine. It's those differences, but essentially we are the same. Everyone wants to be in a harmonious environment. Even those who may seem like they're angry and they're agitated, and they may be more on the semi-violent path, they really do want harmony. They're upset and angry at their displacement in life. So everyone wants to be in a harmonious environment, and we want family, we want to be able to progress, we want to achieve, we want to have a good life. That's the one common thread I've seen across all of the places I've traveled and have lived in. And
And
we're beautifully different, as I said.
yeah, I think that's beautiful. And the only differences are those that we see with the eyes.
Yes.
That's profound. You've said a lot of profound things in this conversation, by the way, that you should write down. I'll write it down, but you should store these away because just that's powerful, right?
Right.
So, how did you find yourself living in all these different places? Because I'm 29 and I've grown up in upstate New York and I've stayed in upstate New York and I've traveled places, but I've stayed here. Have you been pulled to different places? Was this like a calling for you, or was it life circumstances that just led you in these different directions?
A bit of life circumstances as well as opportunities. So I'm from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's a country in the Caribbean. So those from St. Vincent were called Vincentian. It's a very small country, like 110,000 people. And so I moved from St. Vincent when I was 7 years old to Barbados, because that's where my aunt was living. My mom was in New York by that time. So she wanted her sister to raise her two kids. So I lived in Barbados for a couple of years. And then we wanted to reunite with my mom, so I moved to New York when I was about 12 years old. And I did the junior high, high school. I went to Mount Holyoke for a bit. So, a bit past you in upstate, going up to Massachusetts.
Mm.
And then I wanted to be able to afford university. So I then went back to Barbados, where I attended the University of the West Indies, and I did my degree in political science. So it's funny you said you wanted to do political science. So I did my degree in political science. And after that, I worked at an advertising agency, and it was a lovely experience. I had the opportunity there. In fact, I did a commercial for them. Then a position of a receptionist came about. So I worked in advertising. But I felt like, look, I love this. It's enjoyable being in the environment, but I want to do more. I did a degree in political science, and I'm a receptionist. I wanted to do more. I know I could do more. And I always had this dream of working for the UN and being a representative and being a delegate. So
Wow.
I did a master's in international trade policy. And from there was one of the director of the program at the time. He spoke about copyright and intellectual property. And I was seeking and trying to figure out what is it that's going to be my thing, because while I was studying, there are only a few people that know this, Brandon. Now you and your audience would know that while I was doing my degree in political science, I was writing tons of songs. I was just writing so much music. There was this burst of creativity for many years. I would have to wake up at 2 a.m. I would always have a pen and paper next to me, and I'm always writing music. And so when that presentation came on copyright and intellectual property, I was like, this is it. I focused my thesis on copyright and the music industry. I did an internship in Canada, but ultimately, that desire and interest of working within the area of intellectual property created an internship opportunity for me at the World Intellectual Property Organization in Geneva. And that's how I ended up there. That's how that opportunity came about.
Wow.
And it was an amazing, amazing experience. And I learned so much. I was able to add a lot of value as well while I was there. And that's how I stayed in Geneva for about 2 years as a consultant with that organization. And yeah, it just went like that. Law school came about as an opportunity. I moved back to Barbados at the time, just because the contract was to be renewed. Then I did my LLB, which is the first bit you have to do when you're doing law school in the UK, the Caribbean, and a number of other countries as well, Commonwealth countries. You do an LLB, which
Mhm.
is your law degree, and then you go to law school, which is the practical component of it. So I did my law school, which is the bar school in
Mhm.
the UK. So I became a barrister in the UK, in Birmingham. That's how I got around to, and that's just a bit, and I was in Ghana volunteering. I went to South Africa for a bit as a delegate
Oh,
representing my country. Yeah, so it was circumstances initially, and then thankfully opportunities just start to arise, and I was able
yeah.
to go around.
Just more great examples of you taking these opportunities as they present themselves to you.
Yes, definitely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with all these songs that you've written?
I've recorded some of them. There was a producer I would work with in Barbados. He was so supportive, KB Sharp, and I did a lot of the recordings. I even pitched to Rihanna's management. But
Whoa.
at that time, her style, the direction of her music had shifted. It would have been the song that I pitched would have been perfect for Good Girl Gone Bad album, period. But
Yeah.
then things transitioned for her, so it wouldn't have, matched what her brand is and what she was representing. So yeah, I wrote quite a bit, and even the producers, like, he's like, you know what, you just had to do that. You just had to get it out. So that was just a process for me to just get it out. Whatever
Yes.
creativity was there, to just let it out. My brother is an artist. He's amazing. So we both, were very creative growing up, and he has stuck with it. Yeah.
Good for him. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that you love to sing. Is that something that you love to do?
I do. I enjoy singing, and there is still, as I said, that dream that haunts you. There is still that little part of me that is like opera. But I have not sang in a number of years. I have not. Since
Really?
made that decision to go to law school, I haven't. And I thought, it would be great if I can find a choir to be a part of. That's actually how when I was in Geneva in my church, I was part of the youth choir and then the main choir. And that's how I really got back into singing opera, but I haven't done any of that in a long time.
Opera. Come on, that's wild. I
Yeah.
love to sing. I sing every day.
Wow.
I record some things, not really my own stuff, although I have started to write my own stuff, which has been really exciting. And
Yeah.
now it's just putting that I play guitar as well, so it's putting the words I write to the actual music on the guitar. And I'm not going to say the words that I'm thinking in my mind, which the words that came into my mind was, I'm not creative in that way. Okay. And
Ah,
that's what, so this is a great example of what we've been talking about.
yeah.
That comes to my mind all the time, that I'm not creative in the way of putting these words to music. But intellectually, I understand that that's not true. I understand that that is a block in itself that's stopping me from doing it. And I've been working through that by writing stuff. Finally, like in the last 6 months, I've started writing my own music. And
Wow.
now I'm working through that by just doing it. Even if I got that belief in that block, I've been working through it slowly, but surely. So I'm with you. I love to sing and I love music too.
That's isn't that funny? That is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll be looking back at it one day, maybe accepting an award and saying, "Oh, I didn't think I could get this done."
Yeah. I'll say I had this great conversation with Shalisha Samuel, who helped me to remove that creativity block. And,
Awesome.
and yeah, but I'd love to see something that you've written. I think that'd be really cool at some point if you could.
They're wild stuff. They're very wild. It's definitely not any I am that I am. It's It's
Hey,
definitely
wild is
a
cool.
bad girl kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I got that when you said Rihanna and you mentioned that album,
Yeah.
100%. So you've done a lot up until this point in your life. You've researched a lot, you've learned a lot about yourself, you've accomplished so much. Like what does the next chapter look like for you? And I guess do you look ahead at the next chapter? Like are you, because you mentioned time is really an illusion. Do you look forward and plan out your next steps, or are you very much receptive to what the universe gives you?
Wow. Well, the thing is, I normally do. And in the first quarter of this year, I was so committed to it. I had a great, I would spend perhaps an entire day working out all the things I would love to achieve. So I would just have a free write experience, all the things I could envision. And then I would say, okay, this is in 5 years, this is for 3 years, this is within this year. How can we break these up into the various quarters? I did all of that. Q1 was a great one. I had everything planned out throughout the week. I would meet with my accountability partners every single week, other groups twice a week. So we'll keep track of each other and how we're doing within our business. For me as a voiceover actor, and at the end of the quarter, I'm now at this stage where, because we're now in Q2, I'm now at this stage where I am more receptive. I am actually so surprised. I am not in my diary like, okay, what's happening this week? What's happening? I my friends can tell you when we meet, I'm the one who have a list of good things this week because I've written it all down. It's based on what plans I had during the week. But lately, I've not been writing anything, and I feel relaxed about it. But I'm also observing it like, wow, that is interesting. I'm more receptive. I did say, in this next month or so, I'm just going to relax and allow my
Yeah.
imagination to just flow. Whenever it is that I am given the prompt from within to act in a physical sense, I will do so. But for now, I'm not creating from my mind. I'm allowing spirit to guide me, intelligence to guide me.
Yes, you're listening to your intuition at this particular moment. And
Yeah.
that surprises me, by the way. It surprises me and it doesn't that you plan in that fashion, because from everything you've said, just from the outside looking in, just reflecting on that, it sounds like these opportunities came and you grasped onto them. Just like you mentioned, you're in that phase right now of not necessarily writing everything down, just
Yeah.
accepting what comes. But when you said that you sat down and you planned out the quarters and you planned out the different tasks and you got the accountability, it surprised me, but it also makes sense because generally people like you who are doing many different things and who are accomplishing many different things at such a young age, it's almost impossible not to plan ahead in that way. And my philosophy on goals has changed a lot as I've gotten older. Like the way I thought about goals when I was 21 is very different to the way I think about them now. But I've always found that having that definite purpose, that aim, is super important to keep us in the primal brain focused so that we do keep moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it does help because you set a clear intention, and everything, it just expands. It's like taking a pebble and dropping it in a water, it just expands. So you're able to say, okay, I want to focus on making 30K this month. I want to focus on gaining 5 pounds this month. And then you start bit by bit, opportunities would arise. You would specifically say, okay, this is what I need to eat. So let's go and buy this kind of food. You create an entire ecosystem around this one goal you have. It just
Yeah.
expands and expands. So yeah, it makes it easier to plan your everyday when you have that very aimed focus. Yeah, surely
What does
does.
that mean? Create an ecosystem around that goal. Can you give me like a different explanation on what that means?
Yeah. So let's say, for example, you want to build your relationships and meet more people. Your net worth is equal to your network, as we would say, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, goal. I want to meet more people. How am I going to achieve this? Let's think of the ecosystem. Where do I work? I mean, I work from home now, but if you go in person, is there someone you can go and say hi to that and have a conversation with? So you can say, at work, I'm going to speak to these kinds of people. I also am in a volunteer organization. I'm going to reach out to 4 people this month and say, let's have a coffee date, like an in person coffee date. That's another bubble. So your volunteer organization, if you're in a church or a mosque or whatever faith group you're in, or any kind of spiritual or faith-based grouping, you can say, I am going to have a session once per month on a particular topic in our faith and invite others to come. So don't, that goal, you create various bubbles around it. I go to this gym, maybe it is, I can say, hey, can we have a hike? Can we do a hike of like 10 people? And at the end of the hike, we do an exercise around, I don't know, eating more green. You create that bubble there. Maybe you have a dog and you want to meet more people that have dogs. You can put out something, whatever, online. It could be on social media. You can say, hey, anyone who has a dog, we're going to be having a walk up this particular hill for on Saturday for like an hour and a half. And that way, look, you have all these bubbles of how you can meet new people. You can
I
even go
love
online and go on social media and say, hey, one of the things I did recently is during my vacation, I had an entire day of, it was just virtual coffee day. And I met with about 7 individuals on that one day, back to back.
Wow.
That's how I was able to meet more people. So that goal, I want to meet more people. And you create an ecosystem. And you can ask them as well, is there someone you want to invite, someone you want to introduce me to? And it just expands that way.
Yes, it goes back to what you said at the beginning of being very intentional with your thoughts and intentional with your actions. You are accepting opportunities. So I think this is very important for those listening. Some people might think, yeah, I'm just going to wait for an opportunity to arise, right? And then grasp onto it. And they might hear what we said at the beginning and say, that's exactly how Shalisha did it. But that's not how you did it, right? You planned, you were intentional, and you grasped onto opportunities, but you only saw those opportunities because you tuned in your mind to see them in the first place. There's, like you said, miracles all around us all the time, but we might not see them because we're not focused on them. It's like when you buy a new car, you start to see that car around town, right? And it's not that those cars weren't there. They've always been there. You just see them now because you're focused on it. It's now something that's important to you. And I went to a conference a long time ago, and they introduced this concept that I'm going to share on the screen here. It's called a mind map. And for those not looking right now at the podcast, if you're just listening, the mind map is exactly what Shalisha just verbally explained. It's in the center, you've got your main goal, and then you've got your different bubbles that go in the different directions of the different subcategories of that goal. So if it's a fitness goal, I want to release 20 pounds in 6 months, maybe that's your goal. Then you can have a sub bubble of nutrition. You can have another bubble for working out. You can have another bubble for joining a fitness community, whether it's online or in person. You can have another bubble of carving out the time to make it happen. Like, it's taking the goal and it's becoming very intentional and breaking down that goal into its different pieces. And the reason I say this again is because there's no way you've gotten to where you've gotten to without a form of planning, but also recognizing opportunities once they arise and executing on them.
You said it, you said it about being attuned. Yes, once you are attuned and the thing is in your mind, you then begin to see it all around you. Like, there is this red Mazda, it's like a metallic red. It's such a beautiful color and I see it everywhere. And every time I see it, I joke around and I say, I pretend as if I'm the car. I'm like, hey, Shalisha, come on in. So I love to see that. And once I see it all the time because that's exactly what I want to be driving one day. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you'll be driving. Look at your shirt's the same color even. It's not metallic,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
it's manifesting. I love that. So
Yeah.
I can't believe an hour's flown by. So I want to ask you, I want to respect your time. Who do you work with right now as a voiceover talent? And give me an idea of how you help those people that you work with, for those listening who do want to work more with you.
Yeah. So I work with advertising agencies as well as marketing executives, as well as companies, as long as your team has someone who is in marketing that can work on developing a script and they understand the entire stream of getting your commercial on air. I work with companies as well. So essentially, I what I offer is what I was telling you earlier is a fruit punch accent.
Mm.
So Diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that is more important today. It has always been important, but companies are recognizing that the way in which they present themselves, their marketing, their advertising, it has to be receptive to a wider audience. And there's a sector in many of our countries where there are people who never hear themselves. And I offer that. I'm from the Caribbean. I've lived many places. I love to play around with different accents. And so I offer what I would call that fruit punch accent, which is a combination of the various places I've lived and have been to. And it is a sound where when you hear that television or radio commercial, you're like, that sounds a bit like me. Or if it doesn't sound like you at all, you're thinking, that sounds so different. I'm going to pay more attention. We listen to the message when we listen to the voice. And that is what I offer advertising agencies, a very different sound, something that is signature and standout.
Wow. We recognize the message when we hear the voice.
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you give me an example of the fruit punch accent? Because I need to hear it. Even if you just said diversity, equity, inclusion is the most important piece of an advertising, like even if you said just something like that.
Okay. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is very important to the development of our economy today. And when you're considering the growth of your market, you may want to include the voices of all kinds of people across the globe. Of course, a voice like Shalisha Samuel will be amazing for your commercials.
I love that. It's spunky. It is like it's got that punch to it, but it does have I understand the name. I understand.
Awesome.
So where can people reach out to you in order to start the conversation to hire you for what you do?
Yes. Well, ShalishaTheActor.com. I'm going to be launching that within the next 2 weeks at least. That's where you will get lots of information there. But for now, you can visit ShalishaSamuel.com/creativity. And all of my information, you will be able to see samples of commercials I've done, see other print work I've done as well, and be able to reach out to me from there.
I love that. Thank you for giving us the example, and thanks for sharing how people can find you. There's links in the description, guys, to make it easy for you. And by the time this episode is out there, your website should be there as well. But if not, both links will be down there, as well as Shalisha's LinkedIn. I'll put that down there as well, so you can follow her and see everything else that she's up to. But this has been an awesome conversation, Shalisha. We took it in a lot of different directions. An hour flew by, and I'm just really grateful to have met you, and I'm grateful that you've come on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was amazing. And it's just like what I would have predicted. We had a good. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Whether you're trying to find what your gifts are, whether you're trying to align with love in your own life, or maybe you're just asking, how do I determine what my next step is in my life, business, or career? This conversation covered it all, and it did it in a fun, fruit punch way that will help you to get to where it is that you want to get to. And by the way, if you need voiceover work done, if you want to express diversity, equity, inclusion in your own business, and really when people hear your message, if you want them to stop and say, wow, that sounds really cool, and then they hear it again and they're like, hey, that's that same voice I heard last time, then you're probably listening to Shalisha, and you've got to bring her on to do your commercials as well in your advertising. So links are in the description to reach out to Shalisha. And if you're a fan, and even if you're not in that business or space and you just want to follow her, links are in the description. Go make that happen. I hope you love this episode. Please share this show with just one other person. If you did enjoy the episode, you're the reason that we've grown over the past 2 years and to nearly 300 episodes, because you are the best part of the Be Better team. Until we talk again next time, continue to be better.